The lady next door often asks, "Is your wife on a business trip again this week?" Why, you ask? Well, she gets pretty excited when my wife is away. The enthusiasm she shows, almost like a whale's call, is quite something, and lately, it's been a bit exhausting for me. I'm a man in my 40s. We moved into our current apartment 5 years ago. My wife, who works for a public corporation, and I both have busy jobs and 2 kids. When the kids were younger, we lived in an apartment near my mother-in-law. People would often ask if it was uncomfortable living so close to my in-laws, and if I was treated well as a son-in-law, but I never felt uncomfortable. My mother, who lives in the countryside, would say, "I can't help with the kids because of farm work, so I'm grateful your mother-in-law is there to help." When I had late projects or workshops, my mother-in-law would take care of the kids overnight, which was a huge relief. Some of my colleagues, who lived far from both sets of parents and had young children, found it so tough that their wives had to quit their jobs. Compared to them, we were very fortunate. Living in the same apartment complex, even on days my mother-in-law wasn't babysitting, we often had meals together. My kids grew very close to their grandparents and loved spending time with them, not just on special occasions, but whenever they could. As my kids reached their teens, there was a development boom in our area. What was once farmland was now being developed into a large apartment complex. We had been preparing for this, and were lucky enough to get an apartment through the housing lottery. Moving to this new place meant we were now a 20-minute drive from my in-laws, which was a bit sad, but we adapted well to our new home. Our new apartment is designed with a staircase layout. About 2 months after we moved in, the neighbors next door moved in. They were a middle-aged couple who looked about 10 years older than us. The woman, who had apparently worked as a senior model, was strikingly beautiful and slender. The man was quiet but had a dignified presence. The lady next door, upon seeing our kids, said, "We moved to the US for studies 30 years ago and had our children there. Our child now lives in Europe, and we rarely see them," expressing her loneliness. We lived as friendly neighbors, greeting each other warmly whenever we met by the elevator. One evening, my wife mentioned, "The lady next door got gifts for the kids for Children's Day," showing me a box of snacks from a department store shopping bag. My wife was thrilled, saying, "I've always wanted to try these famous snacks, and, thanks to her, now I can." A few days later, she bought a walnut pie from a bakery as a return gesture. My wife's office was an hour from home, but when her department moved to another region, she started spending half the week living in a company residence. The kids managed their school and after-school schedules well, so there was little for my wife to worry about. On the days she wasn't home, I took care of communicating with the kids and managing their schedules. Some wondered how I managed without my wife, but she was working energetically, looking forward to her pension, so I felt it was only natural for me to support her. One day, the lady next door saw my wife leaving with a suitcase and asked if she was going on a trip. I explained that my wife had to travel back and forth to the regional office, and since then, the neighbor occasionally sent over side dishes. My wife, who dislikes being in debt to anyone, suggested I subtly inquire about the neighbor's food preferences. I asked, "Does your boss like spicy food? My mom made some side dishes with vegetables from her garden. Would you like to try them?" This way, I figured out the couple's food likes and dislikes, and informed my wife, who then ordered ingredients online to send them something in return. Whenever we received something from the neighbor, we made sure to reciprocate with an equivalent gesture. The neighbor commented, "It's nice to see young people being so thoughtful. I gave it to you to share. You don't have to pay me back," gratefully accepting our gestures. This made me feel relieved that we had established a good relationship with our neighbor. Although my wife's commuting made my workload a bit heavier, I was proud of my smart and beautiful wife, who excelled at her job. One evening, after the kids returned from their after-school programs, and we had a late dinner, we encountered the neighbor's husband standing in the hallway, seemingly drunk. "Sir, why don't you go inside? Shall I ring the bell for you?" I offered. He replied, "No, that's fine. My wife dislikes it when I drink, so I'm waiting to sober up a bit. I think I'm okay now." And he entered his apartment using the door code. The weekend came, and with the kids' exams over, they went to visit their grandparents with my wife. While I was deciding whether to meet a friend or go to the movies, the neighbor lady rang the bell. This morning, out of curiosity about what was happening outside, I stepped out and was greeted by my neighbor. She said with a smile, "Did the new mom come by? Try this. My family sent it from home, and it's the perfect time for asparagus. In the countryside, there's such a thing as asparagus thieves, so it's hard to get a lot of it." I've always appreciated how she looks out for others, offering food first, so I invited her in for a bit. My wife had taken the kids to her parents' house in the morning, and I was wondering what to do with myself. The neighbor mentioned, "It's been a few days since I've spoken to my husband. He came home the other day, drunk as a skunk. He's a gentle soul, but when he drinks, he becomes unrecognizable, and it worries me he might get into trouble." She shared her frustrations about her husband, adding, "Where's your husband off to this weekend?" When I told her he went fishing with friends and would be back late, she looked displeased. As she looked around our tidy home, she commented, "For a working couple, you keep a very clean house. It's impressive how organized everything is over the weekend. You must be very diligent." Just then, feeling the hunger pangs since the kids had left after eating, she offered, "Most people blanch asparagus, but you can also make a pancake out of it. Shall I make some for you?" Since I had just bought some pancake mix yesterday, she skillfully prepared asparagus pancakes for us. We watched a movie on Netflix and ate the pancakes together, and I began to feel more at ease with her, almost like she was an older sister. She shared, "Raising a child was so hard after studying abroad. I thought it would be good for my child to have a sibling, but things haven't gone as planned. You're lucky to have both a son and a daughter." Her envious look made me start to worry about her loneliness. She mentioned feeling isolated, with her son far away and her husband focused on his hobbies, expressing how life seemed meaningless and lonely lately. I opened up about how fleeting my time with my wife feels as she travels back and forth from the countryside. We quickly understood each other's grievances and found comfort in each other's company. By evening, she was laughing loudly, then shyly wondered if it was all right. Since then, we've been spending a lot of time together, always finding excuses to visit each other's homes. When I go over to her place, I pretend to fix something, carrying tools, and when she comes over, she brings delicious food. I want to fulfill her wish to spend more time together, but I'm conflicted about how to plan for it. I feel guilty towards my wife, but it's hard to ignore my kind and beautiful neighbor. It feels like we've gone too far to turn back now.